all these people that have been appointed, nominated for positions in the next cabinet, a lot of them have gotten a lot of discussion. One of them that hasn't got a ton of discussion is Pete Hegseth. And he's been nominated to be the next Secretary of Defense. Not many people know much about Pete Hegseth because, one, he is not a kind of like name brand, big established neocon person that you typically think of when you think about these roles. I want to talk a little bit about who he is and why it's very interesting that he is the person that is appointed for the next Secretary of Defense. He's been a Fox News contributor. He's been the co-host of Fox and Friends on the weekend, which is where people mostly know him from. But he actually served as an infantry officer in the Army National Guard. He deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, and Guantanamo Bay. He got 2 Bronze Stars for his service. He is very smart. He graduated from Princeton University in 2003 and also earned a master's in public policy from Harvard. And he ran for the U.S. Senate in Minnesota, and he served as the CEO of Concerned Veterans for America. I listened to an excellent interview with him. If you guys haven't never listened to the Sean Ryan podcast, he interviews Pete for a couple hours and talks about really his book, which is called The War on Warriors, and his plan, what he thinks should be done. This was recorded before he was nominated, what he's going to do, what he thinks the military should do, and what his appointment means. So first, I want to say that a lot of people are skeptical because they're like, he doesn't have a lot of experience. But when you listen to him talk about his plan, it is very different than what has been going on in the Department of Defense. A couple of things. If you listen to him talk about what his number one goal for the Department of Defense is, it's to return it to a meritocracy. He actually talks about how the standards for soldiers have been slowly degrading, and he wants to bring those standards back to 1995, which was the time when the standards for soldiers were the highest. He wants to reevaluate a lot of the diversity and inclusion initiatives that he believes do not make the military more lethal. Specifically, when we talk about foreign policy, the thing that I think is most interesting about Pete is he has a very different view on foreign policy than a lot of the current administration. And as a soldier, the book that he wrote was specifically about whether or not he believes that he can recommend joining the military to his son. And he frames a lot of his thinking about his experience in the military, how the military is a family business, and whether or not it's on the right track, and that it's something that he can still recommend to people in his family. And one of the biggest criticisms that he has is that we've been wasteful with our military and with the lives of our young soldiers. And his biggest shift, in my opinion, listening to his discussion, is that he does not want to deploy people unless it is completely necessary. He's very skeptical of international coalitions and would rather focus on unilateral agreements, focus on America's best interest. I'm quite bullish on this appointment. What are your thoughts on Pete Hegseth? What have you read about him? How deep have you dove into this?
I think he's a good example of outsider. I'm using air quotes on that because he's this appointee or proposed appointee that Trump is putting forward that, and I hate to use this word, but this is what it is, the deep state doesn't like. And it's because he's not necessarily a pedigree guy that has been serving in DC for the past couple of decades. The ironic thing is he literally
he's got also a very specific opposite view of what our administrations have had. Yeah.
He's challenging them like literally by what he's saying, but I'm just saying there's a challenge on what he's actually been active in doing. But the irony of all this is he actually served. He was like an infantry soldier. It doesn't really get much more boots on the ground than that. And so for the average person looking at this, I think this is incredibly positive because this is where the world, I think, has gone nuts the past 4 or 5 years, which is we've just kind of ignored people's qualifications to do a job correctly. We're basing somebody's eligibility on something on their race, gender, or something that has nothing to do with whether or not they're actually the best fit for whatever the job is. And when it comes to being a soldier or somebody who has to execute some technical ability, I want the best person in there. I don't care like what they look like, who they are, as long as, their alliances to America and that they can perform the job really well. I'll give a really good example. And I know, I don't want to beat this dead horse, but like the meritocracy part is so damn important. I was a firefighter in Los Angeles, a professional firefighter, a class 1 fire department. This was a no bullshit type of job, grooming standards like you wouldn't believe. It's paramilitary. And at the end of the day,
too long right now.
Yeah, totally. My sideburns are a little bit too long here. I got to say that if you were going into a fire with somebody or going to some serious emergency situation, say like a trench rescue or something that's like if you screw up, like you're going to die, you want the person next to you as the most highly qualified person. I don't care what they are, who they look like, whatever. You want somebody who can like literally pick you up and pull you out of there. And I hope the public wants the same thing. If you call 911 and you want to get rescued, you want the person who can save your freaking life. And the same applies to the US government. I want the person who's most qualified or the most diplomatic or the person who is going to get the best result for the US when they are in a different country. That's the bottom line.